Hello and welcome to Benches in 10 with me, David Brooks, all on my own again this week. It's been a funny week this week, so I've been off for most of it, either looking after my youngest or actually down in London with Ian Beeston from VCX and a few other people from the Landcat. We're in a couple of bands together, so we've got Green Fighters, who are in battling in Sustainability Rocks, which is coming up on the 1st of October, and our sort of parent band, because Green Fighters is an offshoot from the band Consumer Duty, who do industry things from time to time. Also won Sustainability Rocks a couple of years ago. So 2 days spent in a rehearsal studio, which was fantastic, but I think I picked up some bug along the way. So I'm feeling pretty rough today. So recording this on a Friday afternoon because I've got a busy week next week, so I won't have time. So slightly croaky, feeling a little bit sorry for myself, but it was great to spend a few days down there. And it is quite quiet, I would say, in the world of pensions at the moment. There's not a lot out there. Lots of surveys from people being released and things like that. It's particularly interesting, in my opinion. So only one real story. Maybe I might squeeze in something at the end. If I remember, I'm not going to talk about IHT, even though there's been quite another bit of discussion around IHT, and sort of, I think people are beginning to understand, and I think people already knew, and I think we know as listeners to this, I've mentioned it quite a few times, the IHT stuff is going to be a big impact on administrators and trustees and personal representatives in particular. Still struggle with that word. So I said I wasn't going to mention it, but ended up saying too much, but we'll move on from that one. The other thing, the only thing that really came out in this week that caught my eye that's worth talking about, I think, is the SPP, so the Society for Pension Professionals, did their response on the ongoing consultation that closes on the 2nd of September into how DB schemes can share the surplus with the employer and possibly members on an ongoing basis. So to sort of resolve the trapped surplus problem, which is sort of recognised as a bit of an issue. So currently, under the current rules, broadly speaking, the only way you can get a surplus out of the DB scheme is to wind up, so secure all the benefits with another provider, so an insurer or a super fund, and then you've released this surplus, identified this surplus, and that can go back to the employer, and as I say, possibly the members as well. So yes, if the new rules will allow that to happen on an ongoing basis for an ongoing scheme. So there's a number of rules that are being consulted on. I'm not going to go into all the details too much around the rules around this. So the SPP response fixes its attention mostly on some of the mechanics, and there's a few proportionality issues, which really got me just thinking about the policy aim. So we should have to sort of take a step back and try to remind ourselves. So it's all very nice, the government are creating these rules to allow surpluses to go back to employers to end sort of the trapped surplus problem. But why would they do that? Why are they interested in doing that? I think there's sort of two things, and they are linked to the broader economy and the sort of desire to get growth. So if these surpluses are trapped in DB schemes for as long as they rumble on until they buy out and wind up, that could take a number of years. If you can allow that to happen sooner, then surpluses can come out, potentially go to the employer. The employer can use those to invest in its business, and hopefully that would make things better for their business, more profitable, higher salaries potentially, but more people being employed or more investment into whatever that business needs. So that's one thing. The other thing is more on the investment side. So if an employer can see its DB scheme has a surplus and it's reached this low dependency funding basis, which is the basis that the surplus will be measured upon. So the low dependency basis effectively means that it's unlikely that you would need further money in from the employer in the future. Not impossible, but just sort of unlikely. That surplus emerges. That surplus then could be invested perhaps in a more exciting way. And the government's view, that exciting way could be productive finance, or at least invested in the UK economy in some way. So we shouldn't forget that's the aim. So the aim is to try to make schemes happier to run on. But one of the SPP points they make is around proportionality. There's a few clunky bits in the regulations, and I think if they want this to be a whole of market sort of approach, they need to perhaps review some of those points the SPP make to make this process more palatable for all schemes. Now, it's a real range. Obviously, we've got very small schemes, 10 million, £5 million worth of assets and liabilities, up to £1 billion schemes. And I think the government are probably looking more at that end and hoping those schemes where the surplus will be larger. But we have to accept this as a whole of market solution. You can imagine a pension scheme with a particularly solvent, strong employer that's got a small DB scheme. Perhaps they'd be interested in doing this as well, of course, on a smaller scale, and that's where the proportionality comes in. It needs to be designed in a way that works for as many schemes as possible, if that's what they want to do. Of course, if the employer and the trustees want to head towards a risk transfer, then that's legitimate, of course. I mean, that's been what most schemes have been aiming for many years. But if there's second option, this new option, the run-on option, I mean, it's not new, is it? It feels new, the way we talk about it sometimes, but run-on, just carrying on, paying members' benefits as they fall due, as you're doing, most listeners' schemes they're working at are doing now, then can you carry on doing that? Is it economically viable for your sponsor? Is it economically viable for the scheme? Does it give good outcomes for the members? There'll be the questions that are top of mind for those arrangements. The other response that I noticed was from PASA, so the Pensions Administration Standards Association. I always get confused with that one. They're just raising some points around some of the practicalities. So practicalities around paying lump sums to members and making the payments to employers. These are things that will go across the table of the administrator. So how they work, and I think SPP noted this as well. There's some sort of timescale between the actuary signing off and the payments being made of like 5 days or something. Nothing happens in 5 days. We need to extend some of these timescales to make sure they're practical. We don't want to fall over at the final hurdle just because of some timescale issue. If you've identified a surplus and it's secured and ring fenced in a particular way, then let's allow a reasonable amount of time to dot the I's and cross the T's and get that money out. So I think that's mostly what I wanted to say on that DB surplus consultation. Broadstone response. I've just been reminding myself that I started writing something in July, so I need to pull that out of the drawer. It's been a busy summer actually, doing other things. So I'll revise that and get that out. Maybe we'll include that on a future Pensions Intent if I think of anything interesting that I haven't said. Oh, the only other thing I still think is interesting that I hadn't noticed from the SPP is around if you are doing one of these calculations to identify the low dependency basis, to identify your surpluses, your data is going to have to be in a very good condition, because you'll want to be sure there aren't any hidden skeletons in the closet that will come out and potentially erode that remaining surplus you might have, because you'll probably want to have a buffer, but also you don't want to risk any deficits re-emerging, because that would be very bad for everybody involved. So data still remains very important, even if you're doing this exercise and not wanting to do a risk transfer to an insurer, when you would perhaps spend a bit more time looking at data. Okay, I'm trying to think anything else I've read this week that was vaguely interesting to you. I think the other thing is the budget. We're already starting budget. It's August, and I can't believe I'm saying the B word, but there has been calls. There were calls a few weeks ago from certain sections of the industry talking about tax-free cash, because last year we had some people speculating that tax-free cash was going to be taken away or reduced dramatically and these kind of things. It's the perennial one that goes round and round. And so another cohort of consultants has said, please, Chancellor, when you're thinking about the budget, can you say anything in advance to suggest that you're not going to do this, so we just don't get people having buyer's remorse and taking their tax-free cash, and when it may not be in their best interests to do so, just for fear of it being taken away. I've said this before, and I'll perhaps say it again one day. I've seen a letter dated 1982, I think, written from a member to a consultant saying, I think they're going to take away tax-free cash. I want to get my money. I think the chances of them dramatically changing tax-free cash are as close to zero as you can get, never zero. I mean, they might do something. Obviously, they have changed it over time with lifetime allowance. There's usually a range of protections to protect tax-free cashes that have already been earned. So, budget speculation. When will it end? Anyway, when will it start? It starts now. Anyway, but let's hope it ends soon as well. Okay, thank you for sticking with me in my poorly state. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying the summer. and I'll see you next time on the next edition of the Pensions in 10. Thank you.